True courage does not require us to close our eyes to the towering obstacles in our path, it requires us to bend down and feel the weight of history in our hands. When the ancient Israelites stood at the edge of the Jordan River, the water was at flood stage, churning wild and heavy over its banks. They did not pretend the water was shallow, and they did not look away from the rushing current. Instead, they carried a specific kind of memory into that terrifying crossing. The Hebrew word for this is Zakar. It is not a passing mental recall. Zakar is a deliberate action, a physical bringing of God's past deliverance so firmly into the present moment that it anchors our footing against the flood. As the priests carrying the ark stepped in, the waters piled up far upstream, leaving the riverbed exposed. But God did not rush his people across the mud to safety. He stopped them in the lowest part of the channel. He commanded 12 men to lift a heavy boulder onto their shoulders. They were instructed to carry these burdens up onto the opposite bank to build a monument. Joshua explained the exact purpose of this strange delay. Joshua said to them, "Cross before the ark of Yahweh your God into the middle of the Jordan, and each of you pick up a stone and put it on your shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of the children of Israel, that this may be a sign among you, that when your children ask in the future, saying, 'What do you mean by these stones?' Then you shall tell them, because the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of Yahweh's covenant. When it crossed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. These stones shall be for a memorial to the children of Israel forever." These rocks were not imbued with magic. They were tangible, rough-edged proof that the ground had been dry. They were a permanent record of an impossible crossing. The obstacles we face today are rarely rushing rivers of muddy water. Sometimes the flood stage looks like a clinical diagnosis printed on stark white paper. We sit in a quiet waiting room, feeling the cold current of fear pulling at our knees. Other times, the barrier is a quiet stack of unpaid bills resting on a kitchen table under a dim light. We might feel the sudden sensation of a shrinking room when deep anxiety decides to take the breath from our lungs. In those moments, generic optimism is simply too thin to hold us up. We cannot just close our eyes and hope the water recedes on its own. We need something solid to grip. We need to reach back into the past and pull out the stones of God's faithfulness. The spiritual discipline of gathering stones requires us to look back at the precise moments God carved a path through our personal wilderness. I think most of us have a memory of a time when there was no earthly way forward, yet a way was somehow made. Perhaps it is an old journal entry written in shaky handwriting during a season of profound grief. Maybe it is the fading echo of a hymn a grandparent sang while weathering their own unimaginable storm. If finding peace in these quiet reflections is something you value, you are always welcome to subscribe and walk the Emmaus Road with us. Our courage today is directly tied to the inventory we keep of yesterday's grace. How often do we stand shivering on the banks of a new crisis, completely forgetting the parted waters we have already walked through? The psalmist knew this deeply human tendency to suffer spiritual amnesia when the night grows dark. He wrote of lying awake, troubled and exhausted, staring into the shadows before making a deliberate, forceful pivot of the mind. I will remember Yah's deeds, for I will remember your wonders of old. I will also meditate on all your work, and consider your doings. This is Zakar in practice. It is reaching into the unseen dark and finding a rock to hold. We see this exact same discipline in a young shepherd boy walking down into the valley of Elah. He was facing a giant whose spear shaft was as thick as a weaver's beam. David did not ignore the terrifying size of Goliath. Instead, He knelt by a shallow wadi. He reached into the cool water and selected 5 smooth stones. He took his staff in his hand, and chose for himself 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag which he had. His sling was in his hand, and he came near to the Philistine. Those stones were shaped by time and current, but they were also shaped by a history of God delivering a boy from the lion and the bear. David carried the past into the valley to face the present. Later in the history of Israel, the prophet Samuel would practice this same rugged theology. After a terrifying Philistine attack where the people were gripped by total panic, God intervened with a voice of thunder that threw the invading army into absolute confusion. When the dust finally settled on the battlefield, Samuel did not just celebrate the relief and move on. He found a massive stone and wedged it deeply into the dirt. Then Samuel took a stone, and set it between Mizpah and Shen, and called its name Ebenezer, saying, Yahweh helped us until now. He named it Ebenezer, which means, stone of help. It was a physical marker left out in the harsh weather. Years later, a weary traveler or a frightened farmer might walk past that open field, run a calloused hand over the rough granite, and remember that the God of the battlefield thunder is the God of the quiet afternoon, too. This profound need for physical reminders did not end in the ancient valleys of Israel. Centuries later, in a dimly lit upper room in Jerusalem, Christ himself would take up this very same practice. Knowing the cross was only hours away, he did not offer his disciples a mere philosophical concept to calm their trembling hearts. He gave them something they could touch, and tear, and taste. He broke bread and poured wine. For I received from the Lord that which also I delivered to you, that the Lord Jesus on the night in which he was betrayed took bread. When he had given thanks, he broke it, and said, Take, eat. This is my body, which is broken for you. Do this in memory of me. In the same way he also took the cup, after supper, saying, This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this, as often as you drink, in memory of me. He commanded them to do this in remembrance, to practice that ancient act of bringing the past into the present. Every time we take communion, we are lifting a stone from the riverbed of history. We are holding the absolute proof of his sacrifice in our hands, anchoring our current struggles to the finished work of Calvary. We are called to build our own altars of remembrance out of the testimonies we refuse to let slip away. When we drive away from a cemetery in the pouring rain, feeling the crushing weight of absence, we desperately need the heavy stone of the empty tomb to anchor our hope. When we sit staring out a frosty window at a world that feels increasingly hostile, we need the solid weight of Christ's own promise. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you, not as the world gives, give I to you. Don't let your heart be troubled, neither let it be fearful. His peace is not fragile. It is not dependent on a favorable outcome. It is a peace forged in the brutal reality of the cross and the undeniable triumph of the resurrection morning. Think of the Israelites shaking the damp mud from their sandals on the far side of the Jordan. They were about to face the towering walls of Jericho. The obstacles were not entirely behind them, the hardest battles were actually just beginning. But now, they had a monument at their backs. When the children of the next generation would point to that stack of boulders in the sun and ask what they meant, the parents would not tell a story about human bravery. They would tell a story about a God who commands the waters. As we face whatever towering barrier stands before us today, we do not need to muster up a blinding, groundless optimism. We only need to bend down and gather the evidence of what God has already done. May you feel the firm, unchanging weight of His faithfulness in your hands. And as you step into the rushing current of this week, may you find that the ground beneath your feet is solid, prepared by the one who has never lost a single soul entrusted to His care. If these moments brought you peace, consider subscribing and walking this road with us. A quiet like, or a word left in the comments, helps these reflections reach others who need them, and that support is what allows us to keep creating them. May peace remain with you until we meet here again.